All right. Calin, welcome to Paragliding Banter. It's a pleasure to have such an experienced pilot like you join Paragliding Banter and share your experiences and tips with us. Um, First of all, welcome again. And may I request you to please give us a little background on yourself and the things that you're doing. I already know a little bit, but it'll be nice if I can hear from you.
For sure, Sajid. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. And yes, well, I'm 40 years old now. And when I was 14 years old, I discovered paragliding. And ever since, I've been in love with the sport. My name is Calin Popa. I studied engineering as a profession, civil engineering. And I also worked in the field for a while. But then when I was like 26, because of my passion for paragliding and my passion and progress in Acro, I decided to move to Nepal and do paragliding full time as a profession. I started with tandems and also with instruction at the same time. So I got my first instructor qualification from Romania, where I'm originally from, in 2011. And ever since, I've been teaching and expanding my area of teaching in paragliding, specifically in the area of SIV courses and Acro, which is my passion. So I am an inquisitive mind. I question everything. I need to find answers. So given my technical background, I had the tools to search for the answers that I was searching for in paragliding. And so I was able to learn more, to expand my knowledge, and to understand and expand, yes, this universe that is flying through the air. It's a whole universe. And pass it on to others in the end, because I like to share my passion, the burning passion for the skies. Of course, over the years, this passion has changed, and what it means to me now is very different than what it meant to me 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But no, over the span of 26 years, it's like a lifelong experience and transformation. So I'm really happy to share with you all of that as your curiosity goes in this direction.
Awesome. That's a really long career, and it's a lot of experience that we hope to cover. But I doubt we'll be able to even do justice to amount of knowledge that you have. We'll try and see what we can get out of this engagement today. Kellen, I also understand that you design for Icaro now, design wings for Icaro.
Yes, I'm assistant designer and test pilot for Icaro, and I modify existing gliders both in the CAD format, so both on the computer, on the design of the airfoil and on design of the shapes and flow stream, and I test them as well. So I also see the result of my work on the computer by testing and trimming and making modifications according to if necessary. Yes, right. For the last 4 years, I've been working with Icaro.
That's awesome. So I have an Aquila, Icaro Aquila, 22 square meters. And my first flight on it was in Oludenis. And I had never flown a freestyle glider or an acro glider before that. And it was a very different feeling. It was a very, coming from an XC to acro glider, it felt very twitchy and very responsive at the same time. And I was a little squirmish on it. Initially, I was not sure whether it will, if it's reacting faster, or am I behind it, or am I ahead of it? And I always thought that the glider was like, if I would look this side, the glider would turn that side. I wasn't really, that was my first feeling. But I ended up doing a few things on it and learned a little bit of acro on it. It's a great wing. What are the modifications that you think you've done to Aquila now?
I did not work on the Aquila project.
Okay.
And before I talk more about this, I want to explain that the freestyle section of gliders, so gliders that are produced with a freestyle dedication, are very, very different from one another, as for intended purpose and handling maneuverability. So it's quite the jungle out there. Right. So there are gliders that are marketed as freestyle. They're good for the dune. They're marketed as freestyle, and they're behaving mostly like a, how to say, a stable flyback EMBs, like the Epic 2, for example. There are gliders that are marketed freestyle, like the Morpheus, which is basically an Acro glider with a certification. So to talk about each one individually, it's you really need to know what you're buying in the freestyle range. About your Aquila, and what I think is that, well, the freestyle range was quite an open range. It was very nice for dynamic feeling. It was also suitable for learning SIV to also learning the first Acro maneuvers and such. And I hope you liked it. It has a very particular feel, the glider, by its own. So it's difficult to compare.
Yeah, you're right. It is slightly different, and I did learn a few things on it, and it was very interesting for me. I also improved my flying style from the learning from that glider. But let's talk about this movement from a XC style of flying to acro, and when people decide to really get into acro. Uh, I want to talk about the whole the decision making process. But there are also a few people in my friend circle and people that we fly around with, a few pilots, who are very unsure about acro. One of the things that they say is that when we're flying XC, we want the glider on top of our head. We don't want it to go anywhere. I feel that after I have done a little bit of acro and I've thrown the wing around and I know that I can manage this, my XC flying has changed drastically. I've been able to do a lot more in terms of going the distance and worry more about looking at the thermal and finding where the next thermal is than worry about what's happening with the wing. So we do progress from there. What is your take on really learning acro and helping uh, XC flying?
Okay, allow me to get a little technical here.
Please do.
So, so it's a very interesting question, and I understand. And we have to put this question into the frame in which it makes sense, which is within paragliding, and that frame, it's also a social and a passion oriented frame where people influence each other by sharing their opinions and discussing, talking banter about what is what thing and what is another and how things should be done. When I said I want to get technical, I want to jump a little bit outside of this frame and analyze it from let's say a logical perspective. So if you take a very simple example, you are exploring let's say an unknown, you know, which can be potentially dangerous, and you don't want to get to the dangerous parts. How do you do it? Well, you just inch one step closer and one step closer, then you go back, then you trace back, and you just go like this with very small steps, trying to anticipate the moment when it gets dangerous, and there to know to stop and consolidate and create a limit. You know? Or you shine a powerful light over all that darkness, and then you see everything really clearly, and then you learn where the dangers are and everything. I think it's pretty much the same. Like, take for example the brake travel. What's the brake travel of a paraglider? From contact point to stall point. How much of that can you use? You're flying XC, of course, brake travel is super important for you, because the more access you have to the whole brake length you have, the more efficient you're going to be that to escape turbulence or be that to just make your thermal super efficient. So of course you can inch closer and closer and closer and get at some point after many repetitions, let's say to 90% of your brake travel. But if you don't break through it, if you don't pass through it and see how to handle what comes afterwards, you're always going to be limited. So just from a logical sense. And I'm not talking SIV and Acro as two distinct things, because they're not. And what is Acro in the end? I mean, if you ask me what is Acro, I'm going to tell you what was Acro for me when Acro started with full stall and wing over. If you ask the kids nowadays in an Acro scene, they're going to say, man, if you're not twisted, it's not Acro. Is that terms? But the thing is, and getting back to the social aspect of paragliding, when people talk, they assume that other people know what those terms mean, and that's where a lot gets lost in confusion.
Right.
There is no difference. In my opinion, there is no difference. As soon as you're exploring the area where the glider is not on your head, you're expanding your universe of knowledge, and therefore, by pushing those boundaries, by being able to function beyond the boundaries that you actually have right now, you're increasing your skill in everything, both in safety, in handling of the paraglider, efficiency in thermals, decisions regarding weather, terrain, landing, and so on.
Right.
So when you say Acro and how does that help for SIV? When you say Acro and how does that help for flying XC? I think it helps in everything.
Right. So I would follow up with a logical question to this is, so when you are in an acro wing or a freestyle wing, the passive safety is much lesser in those wings, and you're more directly connected to the glider, and you're doing maneuvers which require precise inputs, and the glider also reacts pretty dynamically. For example, a SAT on the freestyle that I have is much faster and easier than doing a SAT on a E and B, or the E and B SAT becomes a little bit slower, but the freestyle wing is far more faster. Let's bring that to the XC wing. So you are playing on a freestyle, but now you fly an XC, and XC wing comes with some passive safety. Does that limit? Does that actually help you, or does that make your progress a little bit longer on XC wing compared to an acro wing or a freestyle wing?
Progress towards what? Because of course, as I said, they're blended in. Handling of the glider and XC are interconnected. But of course, if my goal is 200 kilometers, then of course I'm going to choose a model that can increase the chances that I'm going to get to make those 200 kilometers and will have the performance I need in transitions. So if it helps or not, well, it's always the best thing is to have your equipment aligned with your goals.
Right.
So of course, an XC wing, and from the term of passive safety, there is quite a lot to discuss. So I don't know which question to answer first. Can you please ask me again the question to be like really clear on my answer?
Okay. So let's say I'm a freestyle flyer, and I also do a little bit of XC. Now I'm moving from my freestyle, and let's say I'm going to B or NSC or somewhere else where it is just XC. So I'm used to throwing the wing and in more dynamic conditions, and I'm very comfortable with SAT and helico and the spirals.
Okay.
So I have got a little bit of overconfidence now because I can handle an acro wing. Now I'm going to an XC wing. And XC wing, I know that if I can do that with the acro, on the XC wing, I'll be much, my level of flying is a little bit higher now. I'm more comfortable on an XC wing because I feel that I can handle an acro wing, I can handle an XC wing easily. That means that I will now pay more attention to finding out where the thermal is, rather than concentrating on keeping the glider on the head and feeling worried the way I used to fly before I got into acro flying. That is my question. How does that help? Does the passive safety of a XC wing dampen the actions that the XC wing does, and therefore increasing your confidence, or not?
Not at all.
You're shaking your head very vigorously. All right. This is what I want.
Not at all. Right. No, it does not dampen your ability to control the glider. Like you will see as you're going on XC wings, you talk about the high B class, and then you go to the C class, D class, and CCC class. As you're progressing, they just become more efficient, more reactive, more precise.
Right.
So of course you can transport your skills from the freestyle and apply them on those gliders. They give a lot of feedback, actually. And you will see when you get a too high level XC wing for your level of training, you're going to feel unpleasant in the air because too much information. So it's talking with you, like every single part of that huge aspect ratio is talking to you. And of course, if you want to perform maneuvers, for example, some maneuvers are not recommended at all. Like please don't SAT an ENC or an END, because you stretch it inside. So you're deforming the aerodynamic profile, and even if you trim it, it's still kind of gone.
Gone,
You don't have it. It's not going to fly as intended and not as efficient. But for a wing over, for example, or for a spiral dive, or for just doing some dynamic turns, of course the dynamics changes because length of the line, aerodynamics of the canopy, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't give you feedback. Of course it gives you feedback.
Right.
Now the passive safety in terms of cross-country wings compared to freestyle, they're a little bit more stable in terms of roll and pitch and yaw, because they're meant to fly. On the other hand, depending on the model and the internal pressure and so on and so forth, they can have less active safety or less consequential, no, passive safety, sorry. They can have less passive safety and more serious consequences in case of turbulences and collapses because of their shape. Right. So not only because of the handling, but of course, your skills on acro can be and will be transported to the XC glider very successfully, especially when you're training on your freestyle for the techniques required for safety on an XC wing, like for example, the two-stage stall, right, which I prefer to call it the pumping stall, which is the way in which you can stall a very high aspect ratio glider two-liner in a way that does not complicate with cravats. It's also the way in which you train on your freestyle affects very much your ability to use the active safety area that a cross-country glider provides.
Right. So that the two-stage stall brings something to my mind. I was last July in 2023, I got myself a Sigma 11, advanced Sigma 11, and I was flying it for the first time in Kashmir. And towards the end of the flight, I had some height, and I decided that, okay, let me just try a two-stage stall. Because the wing before this that I was flying, ENC, was a Volt 2, which is a bigger aspect ratio. Volt 2, it is an older wing. And that wing is more like very stable, and it doesn't move much, and it gives a lot of good feedback and control. So that needed a two-stage stall, like I would pull it down, I hold it, and then pump it again, and it would stall back and release and catch it again. And sometimes it would go into backward. I try to do the same with advanced Sigma, brand new wing, new design, new passive safety obviously built into it, and I pumped it once and released it, thinking that I will go back to the second stage of the stall process, but it had already stalled within that, which was like a normal E&B stall process, and I went into a cascade, and I had to recover. Yeah, I did some acro on the wing for the first time. So yeah, I did. Acro. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's not acro, but yeah, it went into a cascade, and I had a very tough time catching it. And eventually, so I figured that I was always behind the wing. I would react after the wing had left the profile, and I would react, and it had already gone into a second profile. And it did 3 or 4 times, and eventually I fell through the wing and I caught the wing. So the point was that not all wings go into I did not keep up with the design, probably with the new design, and I was still thinking of the old wing. So that was my experience. What do you have to say about that?
Now we get to my work and what yes. I do.
Yes.
I create processes right. of learning with clear markers and a good backbone of understanding behind them. Right. Yes, gliders act differently. Different models of the same class, different models in different classes, and so on. I create, as I said, protocols. I create formats that are to follow, algorithms if you prefer, right. with clear markers and indicators that apply across gliders and that are dedicated to certain gliders. Like you don't do a classic spin on an acro glider like you do it on a normal glider. But you can learn it on a normal glider in the two-stage stall. You can learn a two-stage stall with respect to doing it afterwards on an ENC on a B glider. Right. So that's actually my method. I have the method and I apply the method with a dedicated goal in hand.
Right.
Not the same stall, it's a different one. And as you're saying that you were behind the glider, I would say the problem was not the glider there. The problem was your interpretation of the procedure that you were actually going to execute. Because if the glider surprised you by stalling, it means, well, you pumped too hard on the first pump. You didn't take the marker of the middle falling. And you were surprised. If you had looked at the middle of the glider and the shape of the glider with the tips, you would have released earlier and pumped it again as the tips are going forward, keeping your marker in mind. And at the moment when the marker clicks and you see the middle poof start to go, your hands would have been up. And from there on, slightly and gently guiding it into exactly what you wanted. A parachutal stall, a high flyback, a medium flyback, or a deep flyback, depending on your choice, my friend.
No, I completely agree. I was completely at fault, and that actually showed me that every glider is different, and I need to get my skills up rather than blame the glider. But you're right.
The way in which those maneuvers are taught, and the way in which people learn those maneuvers or the procedures, the way in which they learn them by themselves is extremely varied across the product of SIV or Acro across the world. So it's not a standardized product. You ask for an SIV, even a basic plastic SIV on a high ENA or a low EMB, you go to two different instructors, you're going to get two different things. We're not talking skydiving here.
Right.
Where it's regulated across the globe and it's a sport which in the end is linked to the military and they have absolutely clear procedures and product control and everything. No, paragliding is a jungle because of its freedom, which is absolutely beautiful. It offers so much freedom. It's so relaxed. People can just take a paraglider, go on a hill and fly.
Right.
Of course, it's not recommended. But anyways, getting back to it, the method is very important and the way in which you understand the progress. And in order to promote this, the only thing we can do as a blanket level is stay informed, search for sources, and use your critical thinking. Because this is in the end what's going to help you as a pilot. Use your critical thinking. Can I understand those things? And if not, can I find somebody who understands them properly and explains them to me without a fault in between, without logical breaks, without it's just so, okay? Without that stuff, because I can't trust someone who says, hey, you have to believe me, I have experience. It is just that way. And is not ready to present the logic behind it.
Right. So, Calin, this is what I want to share with you is Clint, who's my friend, who just did his acro course with you in Olodenis, and that's when we spoke. Before we spoke, he gave me a little background on what he learned. And what he said was, Sajid, Calin has got a process in which he will make you unlearn everything. All the things that we had learned and the way we were doing things is different, but he explains to you the whole process and you understand it much better. And we have done a few flights and my flying has changed completely. And I understand it much better and much deeper. That's when I said, listen, can I get Calin on the podcast, Paragliding Banter? So that's where it started. So my question is this. I will come back to what Clint was saying and about your course. But before I get into that, I want to put Clint as an example where we had experienced something different. So he and I both bought the Aquila, which was 22 square meters. And we both used to fly and we both used to do wing overs. We have done train together in Olodenis. But then he went on and bought himself a 18 square meter wing, an Acro 18 square meter wing. And then he tried to train on it. And immediately he was like, Sajid, I'm not happy. It's not working. Every time I try to exit the helico, I get into a lot of trouble, and I don't know why this is happening. And he did that for a long time, and eventually decided to sell the wing and go back to a higher square meter wing. Now, from 22 square meters to 18 square meters, such a big difference. Could you please explain to us what really happened over here?
A square meter is a lot for an acro glider.
Right.
I mean, what is an acro glider? It's a glider that can perform infinite tumbling reliably. You need some very particular angles of attack and pressure point movement. So for that maneuver to be able to be done, right?
Right.
So it's already a high standard. At that moment, the wing loading affects this shooting ability. Well, with the square root. Sorry, with the square, not the square root, with the square of the speed of the airspeed. So
Right.
it matters a lot. 18 to 21 is a huge difference. And going to an 18 square meter with his total loading of the glider at the level of skill at which can be acquired on an Aquila and not a structured level of skill, because as far as I've heard, he's learned quite a lot himself
Right.
on the Aquila. So without having the markers that I was talking about
Right.
before, I cannot stress how important those markers are. There's logical markers which gives us the information of what is actually happening with the glider and where do they fit in the process of handling that maneuver and of learning that maneuver. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that he was unable to
Right.
handle the 18 square meters. It was a good decision, though. However, it came at the cost of emotional and psychological comfort while performing maneuvers.
Right.
The experience on the 18 damaged his confidence, and it also damaged his ability to learn as well for that period, because of all these surprises. It's like you're a horse rider and you're jumping on a super crazy horse. Yeah,
Right.
well, that horse can perform for sure if it has a rider that knows the horse and is ready for it, but otherwise it's a horrible experience. It's like you're being taken around for a ride that you can't follow up, you can't keep up with. Pretty much similar experience that you had with the
Right.
Volt, with the Sigma, uh, but repeatedly, so not just once. But what was really great with Clint was that when we met, he still had the spark of curiosity and the spark of desire for aerobatic maneuvers strong enough to search for me and to say, "Hey, Colin, let's do this together. Show me." And all I did was just to bring him to some basics, as in flyback and wing over for a while to reinforce those healthy habits that he
Right.
had, but he lost them. He lost them in the race of running behind the 18 square meters blackout.
Right.
And we found them, we cemented them, and then we rediscovered those maneuvers, particularly helicopter, deep stall, and I also introduced the asymmetric SAT, which he loved as well, on this new foundation, on this reinforced foundation of comfort and trust that the procedure works. And this would not have been possible on an 18 square meter. So equipment selection for the level of experience and the emotional, psycho-emotional circumstance of a pilot is absolutely paramount in importance. And that can only be done once there is a method behind, when there is a method of teaching behind, because then we select equipment according to the method and the level of the pilot, and then we achieve optimal results.
Right. So, but I do have to say that Clint is a amazing pilot, and he's got his head on his shoulders. He did not push that feeling of not being able to fly an 18 square meter, and did not let his ego get in the way. He decided to put it down softly and decided to move to a higher wing, which is a big decision for people to make and accept. So that temperament is really good about him. So
Best
yes,
decision he ever made with respect to learning Acro.
that's right. Cool. I would now like to get into a little bit of specifics about certain maneuvers. If you could, explain us on a few basic things. I think the first one that everyone wants to do is wing overs. And like you mentioned earlier, like if you do an SIV with certain people, it'll be different, and everywhere it'll move ahead. But then the markers are important, and if you have the markers, then you are able to establish what's going to happen next, and and that's your way of teaching, which is amazing. We have done a few SIVs, and you also have done a SIV course in Olugenes, I guess.
I'm sorry, if
Do you
I
run
do
the
courses
SIV
in
course in
Oludenis?
Olugenes? Yes.
Yes, my
Is-
base is in Oludenis for
Okay.
courses. The whole month of May and the whole month of October, I am in Oludenis teaching courses. My
And
courses are
Okay.
really international, and I think Oludenis is a beautiful location because it's worldwide known, and people can travel to Oludenis from all corners of the world, from China, spanning all the way to America, South America. I think it's also a historical place when it comes to paragliding. It's epic, and I love it.
Yeah,
Yes, I am there.
Olugenes is
That's
magic.
my
So how does one book your course, Calin?
well, at the moment, usually people book my course by recommendation of other pilots.
Okay.
I do have a website which is, well, still waiting reconstruction. I work mostly on recommendations. So
somebody
someone
can
knows
get in
me
touch with you on the phone and
very easily. They just contact me on WhatsApp and they say they want to join, and from there on, the process is pretty simple. I make an interview with them.
right.
So with every new person that wants to join, I have a 1 hour phone call where they tell me about themselves. I tell them about my course. And after that, they just send me an email for registration and they register. I do have public information on my website, but it's not marketing oriented at the moment. So it's just to provide some more information to the students. They can read my website and know more about me. But I would say 95% of my students come through recommendations.
Awesome. What are the things that are needed for your course? So obviously an acro or a freestyle wing. Do we need 2 reserves?
No, actually, I teach everything from pitch control to twisted infinite tumbling. So you can
Okay.
come with any level, any equipment, as long as it's suitable for your level. And if it's not, no problem. We find a glider for rent, and then you're going to do the course on a suitable glider for you. It's not a problem. I mean, you're going to come on an 18 square meter blackout, but you're not confident in the flyback, for example. I'm going to be like, man, bring that wing as well. Maybe we get to use it, but also bring one of those. And I would say a high B or low B, or not a high B, a low B or freestyle, or even an ENA. Why not? Until we get your confidence in the flyback, and then we see where you get to. And if you get to use that Acro wing, good. And if you don't, well, it's okay. It's no problem. You learn in that direction as efficient as possible. And yeah, you take those skills home.
Awesome. So people who are listening to us, you can go to Calin Popa's website and you can find information over there. And he conducts courses in Olugenes. And please feel free to get in touch. And I've got great feedback from my friends Arvind and Clint, who have just done this course. And I think also Priya, she's from our group. I think she also upgraded to Acro, which is amazing to know. Calin, I'm going to end the first episode here now. And in the next one, we'll speak about the maneuvers, specific maneuvers like wingovers and sat and stalls, and get your take on that. And I look forward to talking to you in a bit.
Okay, super. You can also mention my website. It's metagliding.com.
Sorry, what is it?
Metagliding. Seem like meta. Yeah,
Okay.
Metagliding, not paragliding, but metagliding.com.
Sure.
Meta is beyond, means
Right.
beyond.
Right. I will also put this in the description on the podcast. All right.
Thank you
Calin,
so much.
thank you so much, and I'll just connect with you in a bit.
Okay, we